Hi, Sahana. Welcome to the SECHI's inaugural event, Unstoppable Women's event. Thanks for joining us today. So, I'll just give a brief introduction of you and then we can get on with your topic for the day.
Sure, thank
So,
you so much.
Sahana works with individuals seeking to realize their true potential and become a better version of themselves. She works with organizations that want to put people in the center of business and grow high value creating teams. She believes in human potential and the ability for all of us to be the best version of ourselves. She coaches to partner with people to support them to progress in their professional, personal, and spiritual growth. She's excited and inspired by human and organizational transformations. Prior to becoming a full-time coach and organizational transformation consultant in 2019, she spent 16 years working for Oracle and Volvo in various profiles, focusing on organizational change and transformation as an internal consultant, facilitator, and coach in lean, agile, and organizational culture principles. She's a psychology graduate, an MBA in international business, a 500 Hatha Yoga, 500 ROIT certified Hatha Yoga teacher, 200 hours of Yoga Nidra teacher, special needs yoga teacher, and a diligent student of Upanishads. She's a polyglot, speaks 7 languages, currently learning Sanskrit and Japanese. Wow, that's really, really impressive. People would describe her as a spiritually oriented person. She takes time out to serve the special needs and under-resourced communities through Karma Yoga. That's very, very impressive, Sahana. And your topic for the day, 7 levels of consciousness, very, very intriguing. I can't get to know more about it. So, what are the 7 levels of consciousness?
Sure, thank you for that lovely introduction, Saraswati. Welcome, everyone. I can't see anyone for some reason. I hope all of you see me okay and hear me okay. More importantly, hear me okay. So, starting with the topic of the day, 7 levels of consciousness, I'd like to introduce it to you in as detail as possible before we take other questions. I understand this is a Q&A format. I'm not sure if there will be other questions, but we will see how that goes. So, 7 levels of consciousness is a framework or a model by a person called Richard Barrett. And Richard Barrett has been inspired by few other models to arrive at this, and we'll get into that in a while. Let me speak about the model itself. The purpose of 7 levels of consciousness model or a framework is to help everybody in personal development. And he's defined the 7 levels based on human psychological development. So, starting with the first level, it's called the survival level. Survival is about our physical, emotional, financial well being. Typically, the 7 levels are also associated with ages of human development. So the first level, survival, right at the bottom, is associated with ages 0 to 2, when we as human babies are more focused on surviving. Um, at this stage of development, humans don't really have a sense of individuality, meaning in psychology, there's a term called theory of mind, where we recognize that each human has their own mind and think differently, whereas a baby under 2 years of age does not really have theory of mind. They don't see a separation between themselves and their immediate surroundings, including their parents. So once the human mind, the baby is able to manage survival by having adequate, needs met adequately by the parents in terms of taking care of the baby. Baby survives and grows further. The next level is relationships level of consciousness. In relationships, it's beyond ages too, when the baby starts to develop and start to have a sense of individuality and realizes the baby, the baby, he or she is different from the other people in the family. What is important for the psychological development here is that the baby feels a sense of belonging. So there is their parents who typically take care of the child, caring for the child and meeting the child's needs. The baby develops, or the human being develops with a security of belonging, with relationships, family, even friendships. And this goes up to ages of 9, and beyond age of 9, when the child starts to enter teenage, uh, the human being starts to develop self-esteem, a sense of who they are and what is their worth. And this is important because as teenagers, we all know how much self-image is really important currently as well as in the past. So a well-developed human being at this stage will have a positive sense of self-image. They will start to become competent in certain areas. They'll focus on earning respect of their immediate relations, including their parents as well as peers and teachers, and so on. So this relationship stage goes from age 9 to age 24 till the human brain is completely developed. Some of us who are familiar with neuroscience and psychology already know that the human brain fully develops only by age 25. The foundation levels, survival, relationships, and self-esteem, are associated with what Richard Barrett calls his ego stage of development. Ego being a sense of I. For a human being to develop fully and not have any kind of deficiencies, these three levels are really important up to the ages of 25. Uh, he also calls them as deficiency needs because if we do not have these needs met, it will be difficult to further develop psychologically in the future years of the human life. So only when the needs at these ego stage development level are met is when a human being is able to go beyond this and start to transform oneself. And the fourth level is really this transformation level. Typically up until then, human beings are very dependent on their parents. There is a conditioning that happens from childhood, which is both cultural as well as parental conditioning, and all the values and beliefs are associated with what is one brought up with. After age of 24, when the brain is fully developed, provided that the human being has had all met and has mastered the lower levels of consciousness, human being is able to start to become independent, start to explore, shedding the beliefs that have been conditioned, and start to explore what it means for them to figure out who they are, what their beliefs are. It takes courage. When they start to develop and transform themselves at this stage 4, they start to evolve. They start to take responsibility for themselves. They become more free. They express their freedom and autonomy. Once they're successful in doing this goes up to age 39. They are able to start to go into what Richard Barrett calls as soul activation. So soul activation, since there are 7 levels, he talks about the bottom 3 levels as the levels of ego. Fourth level is the transformation. Then the top 3 levels are levels of consciousness related to our soul. What does that mean? Of course, depending on your belief, you may have some definition of soul. Here, what it means is really to be in connect with our own inner selves, inner awareness or inner consciousness, or the larger universal consciousness, whatever one might believe in, to be able to fully express ourselves as we are and not be bogged down by the fears that arise due to our conditioning or unmet needs that we may have through childhood. So at stage 5, a human being once has been able to become independent and let go of the conditioning and has started to form their own beliefs, will start to express themselves more authentically. What does it mean? They start to look for purpose, to live in alignment with their purpose. They may start to explore their skills and talents. They may get clarity of who they want to be and how they want to go about in their life. And this leads to meaning and purpose and self expression, so which is stage 5. Once a human is able to master this goes on from age 39 to 49, roughly around 50. They are able to start to go beyond self-expression to connection. Once they've identified the purpose they want to live with in their life, they start to connect and collaborate with people who have similar purpose to spread it and make a difference in the world. So here it will mean community involvement, starting to enter into collaborations without any kind of personal or selfish agenda, rather to make a difference and invest in unconditional relationships, empathy, and be aware of the community. And once a human is able to master this, which goes up to age 60, 60 plus is the final stage of the soul activation, which Richard Barrett calls as contribution. Here, a human is able to completely let go of a sense of self and live in flow or in synchronicity with their internal purpose. And the whole drive will be about the internal purpose. They will start to expand and look beyond their community, think about ecological impact as well as environmental awareness, future generations, long term perspective about the future, and take responsibility to be able to serve the larger humanity, the larger ecology. And some of the traits that might show up here are compassion and long term perspective. This is the seventh level of consciousness. And as I said, it's associated with ages. Of course, it's possible that there are people who are fortunate and have had all their needs met in their younger childhood and adulthood, and hence are able to fully come into self-expression earlier than their age. It happens, but most people will need to master their lower levels of consciousness, the deficiency needs, the ego needs. Perhaps even if someone has found, let's say, their calling or purpose in life, but they haven't fully resolved an unmet need in relationships and belonging, it will hold them back to fully express themselves. So it's important that as human beings, for our personal development, we are able to master our lower level needs. Mastery would indicate that we have resolved any kind of unmet need and we feel fully secure and established in those levels to be able to start working on our higher levels of consciousness. The higher levels of consciousness, as I said, are related to soul activation, what he calls as growth needs. The lower are deficiency needs, the higher are growth needs. For us to grow as human beings, to come into our own potential, to connect, to contribute to self-express, it's important that we are able to transform ourselves by mastering the lower levels. So that's about the 7 levels of consciousness, Saraswati.
Thanks. That's a very, very interesting concept. At least I am hearing it for the first time. So, what has inspired this framework?
Yeah. So Richard Barrett has been inspired by
Your voice is not
the
audible.
first one is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure many of us have read
That
it
I've
in
heard. Yeah.
school or college or
Yes.
remember it from other literature. What
Yes.
Richard Barrett did, he took Maslow's of hierarchy of needs, but he changed it slightly because, as we know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is more focused on the needs as such, and naming is slightly different. Here, he expanded the self-actualization level into 3 further levels, whereas Maslow's hierarchy of needs has only 1 level of self-actualization. The purpose is for us to have a framework which can guide us in a structured manner to be able to develop ourselves psychologically. That is one inspiration Richard Barrett has. And the other is he has taken inspiration from our own Indian philosophy. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi had 7 levels of consciousness in his transcendental philosophy. So Richard Barrett has been partly influenced by that as well, which is why he's expanded the top 3 self-actualization levels very much based on Indian Vedantic philosophy. As well, there is an association with 7 chakras. Some of us who are familiar with Indian philosophy know that there is a subtle body we associate beyond the physical body, and the subtle body has 7 energy centers or 7 chakras, and the 7 levels of consciousness are also inspired by that. Of course, there's no one-to-one correlation, so we cannot map Richard Barrett's 7 levels of consciousness model exactly to 7 chakras in all aspects, or to Maharshi Mahesh Yogi's 7 levels of consciousness in all aspects. There are overlaps, and he has been inspired by these to come out with this model, and he has updated the model a bit in terms of the terminology. For example, the top 3 levels, the names were different in the past. He's changed them now to have self-expression, connection, and contribution.
Okay. So how does this actually, how
So
do you
that's
use
the
it in your...
inspiration, Saraswati.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You
What I
still hear
wanted
me?
to know, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I have lost audio.
Okay. Can you hear
Rajpreet,
me
can
now?
you hear me?
Yes,
We can
Sahana.
hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hmm. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay, I'm not able to hear anyone for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for confirming, Rajpreet. Yeah, so that was the answer to the second question, Saraswati.
Yeah. So I had one more question, but not sure whether you're able to hear me.
Yeah, I think it's because of that call this has happened. Yeah,
You can
please
type
type it. I
it,
think that will help.
Saraswati. You can type the question.
Yeah, then I'll just have to go off screen. 1 second.
Or would you like me to reconnect? Would you want me to leave and rejoin?
No, it's okay.
How do we use this model in personal development?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things how the levels of consciousness show up is through the values that we operate from. So when I say operate from, all of us have some inherent beliefs which we hold as important for us, and we do not want to compromise on those. For example, for some people, it might be that relationship, family is a value, and they wouldn't want to compromise on that if that is their value. So Richard Barrett gives a very good assessment called a personal values assessment. It's free. It takes only 5 minutes. You all can go into Barrett Academy or just Google personal values assessment and you will find it. This is one way for us to find out what do we hold as values for ourselves that are important to live by. And once we do this exercise, he maps the values against the 7 levels of consciousness for us to know which levels of consciousness are we operating from. Of course, it may be a spread, right? Not all values will belong to one level of consciousness. The good thing about this is this report is also that it brings up limiting values. So what are limiting values? Because of any unmet need we may have, going back to either our childhood or upbringing. For example, if someone who has not had a sense of belonging in the relationship for any reason may feel that they need approval of others to feel a sense of belonging. So being liked becomes a value. Being liked in itself seems like a good value to have. However, it's limiting because they will start to do everything based on only that value of being liked, right? They may even go beyond listening to themselves of what they want to do or don't want to do and still go ahead with it because they want to be liked by others. So this report is one way for us to find out what if we have any limiting values, and overcome those by mastering our unmet needs. And of course, in the personal values, some of us may have some aspiring values. So what are aspiring values? Let's say we are still in the lower level of consciousness. However, we want to be at a place where we are pursuing our purpose in life, even if we haven't figured that out. So we may have that as an aspiring value, which is absolutely fine. It also gives us a direction of where we want to develop further, and how do we incorporate that value into our life by behaviors, because values are deep rooted and they show up as external outward behaviors in our life when it comes to decision making or when it comes to interactions with others. So one way to use this model for personal development is simply taking this personal values assessment, understanding what are our values, if there are any limiting values, and how do we express those values in our life, and master if there are any unmet needs related to our limiting beliefs, as well as it's a guide for us. Once we get familiar with this model, it's a guide for us on how we want to develop. For example, if it's someone who's very young, who's under 25, and still developing their uh, self-esteem by being focused on their competence, being the best, it's a good place for them to start to think about how do they become independent and let go of the conditioning they may be carrying from their childhood and take more responsibility in life to become more autonomous. So this model applies very well personally if we are young. Of course, if you're older and let's say we are already 50, but we still haven't come to a place where we start to live our purpose, it's completely all right. It's time for us to figure out where are we operating from, which of the levels are we at right now, regardless of age, and what is holding us back there to master it and move past it and self transform. So it works for all age groups in slightly different manners. And one step into it is to take this free assessment, personal values assessment, online, and preferably work with someone who understands this better so that they can guide you and coach you in developing.
Thank you, Sahana. So just one last question before we end. How do we use
Okay.
this practically in coaching?
Yeah. How do we use this practically in coaching? I also vaguely heard that it's the last question. So I hope that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as coaches, we can use this to help our clients, because our clients, whether it's individual clients, one-to-one clients, or even teams, they come with certain aspirations, right? The aspirations are either by themselves or it's asked for by the company or the management, and they have to fulfill those aspirations. So often they may want to figure out, I'll take another example, they may want to figure out their purpose, but there's something else holding them back in the lower level needs, deficiency needs, which is unmet. So it's good for coaches to use this personal values assessment and this model to help clients overcome their limiting beliefs so that they're able to master their lower levels, hence meet their higher level goals. Typically, we hear management want people to take on more responsibility, or they want them to be creative, innovative. All of those happen at higher levels. It's difficult for them to do that if they haven't mastered their lower level needs yet. If someone who doesn't think of themselves as being competent or doesn't have a positive self-image, it becomes very difficult for such a person to be able to innovate and express their creative talents fully. They may be expressing to a large extent, but not to the full extent. Hence, coaches can use this tool to work with clients, individual clients or teams. Even leaders, there is another assessment for leaders. It's called leadership value assessment. Similarly, you can do it for teams as well. You can do it for the whole organization. In fact, Richard Barrett has done it for a large sample size of people across the world, and he has a framework for societal well-being as well. So it can be scaled from individual team to organization to society. So there are multiple ways of incorporating that depending on what kind of client we are working with and what are their goals. So I would recommend also, my personal philosophy is before you serve it to others, taste it, eat it yourself. So I would encourage coaches, if they haven't really done this already, just to get familiar with the model, apply it in their own life by doing the personal values assessment and looking at where they are in the 7 levels and how do they want to work with their own personal development. It gets easier to be able to apply it to the clients once we are familiar with it ourselves.
Thank you, Sahana. Thank you so much. That was very, very enlightening. Any message for our Sechis community?
I'm sorry, I barely hear you, but I think I got any message. Is that right? Is that the last
Yeah,
thing you said?
message for Sechis community.
Yeah. Okay. So my personal message is that we at this stage of humanity where we are, message say cheese. I'm sorry, Saraswati, I don't think I understand what that means.
It's okay, fine, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on call. Rajpreet, we can end the room.
Thanks, Sahana. Thanks, Saras. Thanks, Divya.